Hello, wonderful people. So we have 3 alumni from Cañada here that are here to offer their insight and experience and advice. We're going to open up to questions from the audience when we get closer to the end, but we're going to start with some more formal questions. So I'm going to ask each of our esteemed panelists here to give a brief introduction, what year they graduated or left Cañada, and their academic path and what they're doing now.
Hello, now I'll start. Hello, my name is Carlos Hernandez. I started here as soon as I graduated from high school. That was in 2001, and I didn't leave until 2006. So 5 years here at Cañada College. I transferred, got my bachelor's degree, continued on. I'm just about to finish my master's degree. And
what are your degrees in?
I got my bachelor's degree in physics with emphasis in astrophysics. And I'm at San Francisco State, just finished all my coursework. Just had to finish my thesis and defend it. In physics with emphasis in astrophysics. And on the other side of the story, I'm also a physicist / electrical engineer during my day and astrophysicist by night.
Hi, I'm Leticia. I started here as well. At CSM first, and then I finished off 1 year in 2000. It's fall 2007 2008, and then I graduated from CSM. I was only here for a year, but I did like it. I guess that here more. The MEP program is really good here. Yeah, the MESA program they call it here. And then I transferred to Cal Poly for a year, but I'm not a small town person because I grew up in the Bay Area, so I left and I went to Sacramento for 2 years, and I graduated there with a bachelor's in electrical engineering with an emphasis in power, and I graduated last fall, so now I started this year at PG. And yep.
Hello everyone, my name is Jorge Pernillo, and I started the whole JC system, all 3 actually, Skyline, Cañada, and CSM, right after I graduated high school, 1995, so a little bit of time there. I guess at that time, I had, by my senior year, I had the opportunity to graduate early because I got all my credits out the way, but the only problem is that my courses were all C's and D's, so go figure. So that's where I transferred to, that's why I did the whole JC thing. On top of that, my mom said that I either continue school or I had to get a job. Precious thought, the latter, right? But anyhow, I found my way in JC. We'll hopefully probably get through some of the ins and outs and how I went through the whole thing. And I transferred after 3 years. It took a year to fine-tune my courses, I suppose. Transferred to Berkeley, UC Berkeley in 1998, and then I graduated in 2000 with a Bachelor's of Science degree in Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. Worked out in the Valley for about 2 years in Palo Alto doing engineering stuff. We'll get into that later as well. After 2 years, I took another 2-year break before going to grad school because I wanted to get a PhD. Traveled a little bit, and then I started grad school at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor in 2004. And I received my master's and my PhD there, and I just recently moved back from Michigan. I've been out here working for 6 months now, back in Silicon Valley, can't escape it. And that's my story for that.
Weather preference?
It's weather preference. Well, right now it's about 35 degrees out there, so I think I prefer the weather over here.
All right, so as a transfer student, we'll start off with, and you guys can kind of go in whatever order you like. What challenges did you face when you transferred to your next university, and how did you address those? How did maybe skills that you learned here or at CSM, we like them too? How did that help you get through your new program?
So interesting enough is that, at least it's probably the same case now, a lot of the professors that I took the lower division courses were all, advanced education degrees, master's, PhD. I mean, Professor Enriquez is a PhD at Ohio State. Can't knock it even though I'm a U of M fan, right? But anyhow, so they're all essentially they're all former graduate students themselves, very capable of teaching you getting the core fundamentals down, so that once you move on, you'll be prepared. That's a given. Going to the San Mateo Unified School, Junior College District, right? Another thing was study groups. I can't emphasize it enough. Work in groups, learn from your peers, and if you have it all down, it doesn't matter. Just work with folks. It'll, iterating what you have in your mind to your peers. It just fine tunes your thought process, and when you move on into industry, you're gonna end up working with people anyhow. So you need to be able to communicate with folks. So I got a lot of value with that, as well as office hours, study groups, office hours, study groups.
So we're noticing a trend with our speakers and how they recommend you go talk to your professors in their office hours.
I think one of the challenges that I noticed when I transferred was, of course, more expensive. So you had to read up on all the loans and like subsidize. I didn't know any of that. I'm the first one in my family to go to college. So it was pretty much, I was left on my own in that. But the MEP program here at least educated me enough for, offered scholarships. And I think when I was in community college, I didn't think of internships or about graduation because it seemed so far in the future. And then once you transfer, you start noticing like, okay, you're gonna graduate soon, and then if you don't have any experience, then you're not gonna be able to get a job. Also, I think it's also socially, I guess, the stereotype that, if you went to community college, I guess, you weren't good enough to go to, straight to a four-year university, which is, in my opinion, yes, because I'm pretty sure, I think most of the people that I met and I studied with when I transferred, they had a higher GPA because, of course, we had to, transfer, so you had to have a certain GPA to transfer as a junior. And I think that, most of the people that I met, they had a solid background because, like he said, most of the professors here, like, Dr. E, they have like a PhD, and they're so focused on their students. And I guess it depends if you go to UC, some other professors, you only have your TA, or if you went in like a CSU, like what I did, because they went to UC. So I guess it's different for them, but for me, the teachers are there, but I don't know, there's just like a slight difference about it. Like, they're not as involved with the students, so you're kind of left on your own, and that's what you said, that, you have to focus on creating your study group. And I guess when I first transferred, it's kind of scary because I had to move out, you're not in your hometown anymore, and you have to kind of, people I ended up studying with are people that also transferred from other community colleges, and like I said, they were the ones that had the highest grades in the class, due to the fact that they had to, they had to work hard, and I guess probably fighting that stereotype that community college students, are not smart, but that's not true. I know a lot of people that started off in a four-year college and they're still without a job. So, yeah, social on the academic portion of that.
So I'm going to touch bases on what both the speakers talked about. Yeah, financial was one of the difficulties, but I guess one of my difficulties was, to be strictly honest with you, is that I really never put my full enthusiasm and I didn't care about school when I was in high school. So after the talk, so why am I at community college? Well, yeah, she has a good point. Don't see it as just those students who failed from high school. Well, I guess I am an exception because I actually started at community college, but the reason was because I didn't have a really good GPA. I had probably a 2.1 plus or minus 0.1. But so I started at community college. I started here at Cañada College, and it was here really that I would see how people were so into school and so enthusiastic about it. And everybody who I met here were really nice people, professors, staff, and students. And one of my best friends that I still have came to Cañada College. One of the best friends I've ever had. I applied my mind, and I was very fortunate to go as far as I have. So what was one of the difficulties I encountered when I really started applying my mind was to know that I had to start from scratch. I didn't know the basics of the history of the United States. I really didn't. I had my brain turn off. And it wasn't until I got here at Cañada College, I said, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. My parents are never going to be there for me. They're going to be here and then they're going to leave. And what am I going to do? Am I going to just be at home, on the couch, playing video games all my life? And so I brainstormed and I gave it a shot. And when I turned my brain on, you can say, I couldn't believe how fun and interesting it was to learn. I love to learn. I love to learn new languages. I love to learn different subjects. I love physics, math, engineering, you name it. I just love it. Every weekend, when my wife and I had a chance, we just sit at home after we go watch a movie and learn German. It's just so much fun. We just love it. We just have the stimulation. We just love to do it. So that's the difficulties that I encountered, was to have to start from bottom up. Where did I start when I started here at Cañada College? I started with Math 811. If any of you know if it still exists. And that's the math class. That's the math class where I believe, if I remember correctly, they teach you how to multiply fractions or add fractions. Or you have a box and it's divided into 4. One of those boxes is filled. What is that? 1/4. I had to learn those stuff from the beginning. And I said to myself, one of those days when I was here at school, one day I'll reach calculus. One day, that'll be the day. Ever since I transferred, calculus has been my vegetables. And not my vegetables, they've been my breakfast actually. I use calculus on a daily basis, and I'm not exaggerating here, I'm not sugarcoating this, but calculus really is one of the easiest things in my career. It's like calculus, I can do this, you know? So that's a little bit about my struggles, was starting from bottom up. So any of you students who are facing the similar phases that I did, don't be deterred, you know? If there's anything that you can do. My advisor, when I was at UC Santa Cruz, one of the most brilliant people I've ever met, went to Cambridge, the best school in the world for astronomy, did his postdoc at Princeton, and he said some humble words to me. He said, Carlos, you can do anything as long as you apply your mind. 90%, 10% is being smart, 90% is just working your butt off. And it's true. It's true. And I live by those words, because if that weren't true, I wouldn't be where I am now, getting my master's in astrophysics. So.
All right, so during your path, is there anything that you found to be a good network or resources that you've used to help you get through from going to college, to university, to get your career? Clubs, family, friends, networks like that?
Good advisors, good friends. Unfortunately, I don't believe he's here anymore, but Arturo Hernandez was one of the counselors here at Cañada College. Not only him, but many of the counselors here, when I was here at Cañada College, were wonderful. Just to talk a little bit about Arturo Hernandez, when I went on the beginning of that spring semester, he looked at my classes that I was enrolled in, and he said, what do you want to do? Well, I want to do astronomy. Astronomy? Do you know how difficult it is to see someone who's Hispanic and wanting to do astronomy? And I wasn't discouraged at all. I was like, well, I guess I haven't even thought about that either. He said, you know what, I'll do what I can to help you out, and I'll direct you to the right path. And he looked at my coursework, and he realized that I was doing some boo-boos. I was doing some mistakes. I wasn't taking the right classes. And he said, you know what, you shouldn't be taking conceptual physics. You should be taking physics with calculus. And I have to thank him a lot, because I think he was a big influence why I was also accepted to UC Santa Cruz. UC Santa Cruz was #1 in the nation for astrophysics in 2006, and that's when I started. When I left, we're still #1 in astrophysics in the country. And for any of you who want to do astrophysics, Santa Cruz is a really good school for that. Great professors, and you will get into research as soon as you get in there, because that's what you really want to do. You want to do astronomy, and you want to contribute. You got to do research, and I enjoy it. Honestly, if it comes to courseworks and research, I love to do research. It's so much fun. I mean, there are hard times. Your program's not working, you have to debug it, but that's all part of it, you know? So,
Well, I guess class-wise, you guys talk to each other when it comes to like, oh, don't take this teacher, he's hard and you won't learn anything, you know? Versus, oh, this teacher is actually really good, you know, and hard, but the difference between a hard teacher and a good teacher. Like we have all Dr. E classes, you'll learn a lot. I guess professionally, I was part of SHIP. I don't know if you guys are, how many of you guys are a part of SHIP? Yeah? No, you guys should go to the conferences because that's where I met my mentor, and he actually helped me with my senior project. And through him, I was able to get like my internship and my current job at PG&E. And he was part of the professional chapter. And most of them end up, if you go to the professional chapter meetings, they tend to like become unofficial mentors. So they kind of help you out. The conferences, of course, if you guys ever gone to them, the national ones, they have like company booths, and you can go there and and see if you can get like a shot of an internship. And the MEP program, which is like the MESA, once you transfer, they offer a lot of help. But for me, how I was able to get, other than my mentors for my internship, I went to the informational sessions, which is like companies go to the campus, they like rent out a room, and then just tell you why you should work for that company. As soon as you transfer, I think you should just start going, whether or not you think you're, like you should like, if you don't think that you're like, well, I don't have enough classes to qualify for it, they have the same recruiters every year that go in there. So like if they start noticing you and like your face and you're so eager to work for them, they'll remember you and then they'll put a star on your resume and the next day you get an interview. So it's about impressing them. So just keep going to those informationals and look up the the company. If you want, like start thinking like, okay, I want to work for this company. Then try making it personal. Because for me, like for PG&E, like I did a lot of community service and they focus a lot on the community. So when they look at my resume, of course they look at your GPA, but they also see if you have a connection to that company. So they're like, okay, we do community service, we do a lot of community, outreach. So it's making that connection with that company. So definitely go to the informational sessions, and they have it for all the schools. So definitely look into that.
All right. I guess I wanted to touch on the course aspect when you're here at JC. One of the speakers had mentioned that, like, oh, take this teacher, that teacher. You do want to challenge yourself because there might be professors' courses where, it's a guaranteed A. The questions are going to be, some of the questions you get in the homework. So if you do all the homework, you should know it. But that doesn't fly once you transfer. You really don't take, if you have a opportunity to take this calculus class and this calculus class, this one is easier, but this one challenges you. It's so easy to take the one and knock it out because you have so much courses that you got to get out, but it's just going to bite you at the end. So I do recommend you challenge yourself on that aspect. In terms of other resources, I believe my last year at JC, I got involved with Inroads. I don't know if Inroads is still around, if anyone has heard of it. There we go. So Inroads, what they do is just, it's an organization that essentially that trains minority youths and helps them to, gives them opportunities to network and to give them access to internships. So I had, my last summer before transferring to Berkeley, I actually applied to the Inroads program, got in, and I got my first internship at Hewlett-Packard. And that alone, that internship there just opened up doors unimaginable. It's all about, you work hard, but it's also about, networking and who you know. That's how I ended up with working at, after I graduated from Berkeley, I ended up being at Agilent Technologies. It used to be Hewlett-Packard before it got spinned off to a different company, and it all started with my internship that started at Inroads. So that organization really is really valuable, and you meet a lot of peers that are on the same boat as you, just trying to go out there and do something positive for your professional career. And I guess. What was the other part of the question?
Any useful networks or relationships that you built along the way that helped?
So, groups. There's, clubs are, definitely it's good for a social outlet. Maybe it's another source of, if you're taking the same courses, you'd have that study groups. But on that aspect, it's good to join different clubs and to be also active in your community because transferring, it's not just about grades, right? You write an essay, reflect who you are and who you want to be, where do you want to go, why do you like that, why did you choose this educational path, obviously, but showing that you're well-rounded, that's what they want to see as well. I mean, you apply to different schools, I mean, just the fact that you have this GPA, that automatically just gives you on this pile instead of that pile, right? Now how else are you going to differentiate yourself? So clubs, community service, that I would definitely emphasize as well.
All right, so this is for Jorge and Leticia, and another one for you, Carlos, in a second. So, why don't you explain a typical day in your current job? Like, do you use things that you learned in getting your degree? Do you not? What type of skills and daily adventures do you undergo?
So typical days, I guess I get in, I check my Facebook. No, seriously, what I do is I'm a design engineer at a communications semiconductor company that builds communication chips for high-end data servers. We'll get into what that means. But anyways, my work is based on the fundamentals of electrical engineering. If anyone has taken Professor E's basic circuits course, KCL, right, KVL, I still use that on a daily basis, small circuit analysis. So what I do is I design circuits that are integrated on a piece of silicon, and it gets manufactured into a chip. And these chips, essentially what they do, they serve a purpose. They transport data from, say, it's a module that allows data to be relayed from, say, the internet to your local network, from your network to your central processing unit, from your CPU to memory, back and forth at high speeds. And all that is based on just on basic fundamentals that I learned here. I mean, I still have Professor E's Foundations of Electrical Engineering book on my shelf. And so that alone, when you have that, just the fundamentals down, that can just take you so many places. But because a lot of people moving into industry, you kind of forget that, and you rely too much on computers and calculators to do your work, but you never have intuitive understanding of what buttons to press, right? So in general, I brush up. I start off my day brushing up on what's latest in literature. I'll spend a good 45 minutes, hour, to see what is the latest journal and see what's out there, because it's always a learning process, right? You need to keep up with what industry is doing, what academia is doing, and what kind of research is going on. So all that is just EE stuff. It's just the fundamentals. And then I guess I go into the design work. I use computer automated design tools and simulators to help you design circuits, and you run these simulators that kind of mimic how they would behave in real life. The difference between doing that in industry and academia, this was part of my research as well in grad school, is that in industry is that you're going to build a part that ships out in millions. And so you need to ensure that it is operational, and there's so many different conditions, environmental conditions, and these devices as well have so much variation. You need to just test the extremes and whatnot to make sure that it be reliable. So I use these simulators to ensure functional operation over the specifications that we get. But it all starts with an idea, because there's so many ways to do the same thing. But now, as you probably know, everything's mobile, everything is low power. So with the objective low power is how can you do something that's been done time and time and time again, but using new techniques, all based on the fundamentals that you were learning in school, but to do it at low power and high speed. So it's a design process. So I start with an idea, put it in a simulator. If it behaves the way I expect it to, then we create a blueprint for it. So then the blueprint itself is, it's a circuit essentially, but the blueprint is a bunch of rectangles and squares, which is it's like a visual representation of how it's going to be manufactured on a piece of silicon. And so once you create this blueprint, you create a circuit out of that blueprint with another computer automated design tool that extracts that information, and you run your simulator again to see if there's any differences between your initial design and what your blueprint design tells you. If that checks out, then you send out your blueprint to a foundry. a foundry manufactures this prototype for you, and in that meantime, you set up your PCB, your test setup. Because you spend a lot of time in front of a computer, but when your prototype is back, you spend even more time in the lab. So you prepare your test setup, you prepare your printed circuit boards where you're going to place your module, and once you get your chip back, you're in the lab debugging, running the test benches that you had set up prior to having your module come back. And this essentially, it could take a while, at least in grad school, I'd be in the lab for months. So once you actually get a prototype and you test it, you get your measurements, and then it's ready to go through another set of validation processes. You send the modules over to your customers, and they run their test benches, and they'll give you feedback. And essentially, the whole goal is to have that as a product. Now, I just actually started at this company 6 months ago, so this is my first go. Well, I'd say a second go. I had worked previously after undergrad at Berkeley, but that was more research. It's a research lab. Now, this is actual product group. So it's my first go around. So I'm still going through this whole process to get a product under my belt. But essentially, that would be the whole design cycle, so to speak. But in between, in that process as well, there's a lot of reviews, a lot of design reviews that you present your work to your peers, and they'll give you feedback, constructive criticism, because there's a lot of, the devil's in the details when it comes to design. You don't want your prototype to come back and it doesn't work because you made a silly error, and that happens, believe it or not. So you have these different checks, different design reviews where you present your work, and that's why it's important to be able to communicate your ideas effectively, because it's no good that you could be the smartest person in the room, but if nobody knows what you're talking about, that's not going to pan out. So I guess that's an all-day thing. By the time I get home, it's time to go to bed.
I think relationship between school and work, I think prepares you for the problem-solving aspect of it, because of course you're not. I personally don't use my TI-89 anymore, and most of the engineers that I work for, there's about 4 of them on my floor. They don't use their TI-89 to integrate or anything; it's just simple calculations. But again, I'm not on the research side of it. Like PhD is here. I don't have that. I only have a bachelor's. So for PG&E, I currently I'm part of a rotational program. So every 6 months I rotate, and there's 3 rotations. So I did my first rotation in distribution planning, which is for San Francisco. So they separate San Francisco into 6 parts, and each engineer is responsible for the distribution section of it, which is pretty much how the power gets from your substation to your home. And they pretty much just manage those lines. So I help them create job packages, and of course the basic fundamentals from what I learned in Dr. A's class, electronics or just circuits. That's important. Like you said, KVL, KCL, you won't get away from that. But a lot of my upper division courses were introduced now, like you have to know like transformers, and pretty much when you focus in your concentration, you end up just those are the basic stuff. But when you start working, they don't exactly expect you to know everything. You're kind of starting from scratch as well. You're learning. The learning process never stops. So I think that's the good comparison between school and when you start working, because like he said, he has a lot of software that he uses, and we're going to learn about softwares and C++ and your Java, and when you go to when you transfer, you have other programs you start learning. So all programs in a way are kind of similar because you start learning how to use them, and then when you start working, you have like that basic fundamentals of the software and how it should work. For me, and now I'm on my second rotation, so it's not engineering, it's more of the business side of it. So I have about 2 months in this rotation on the business side. So it's definitely different from engineering, but the ones who are doing the business are the engineers, because we're dealing with, my boss represents the $1 billion from PG&E, so he just pretty much has it's like lawyers and meetings. It's very different from engineering, but at the same time we're representing the engineering behind PG&E and the rate case, so the money that you guys end up paying for your bill for PG&E, which I'm sure we're all customers for PG&E. So, I mean, PG&E, working for a corporation, I guess, or a business like that, is that you're able to move around. And electrical engineering, they like, well, at least I think any engineering, they like that because they know it's a hard major, and we didn't slack off, like, but I think it's just having the basics of what geoengineering is, but the learning process never stops. And they like engineers for the fact that, I'm not trying to be like, how many of you guys are engineer majors or thinking of engineering?
We love all majors here.
Yes, okay, yeah.
So long as they're STEM.
Yes, no, I agree, yeah. But engineering, it just takes a different mindset, and it's extremely hard. And I'm not trying to discourage anyone from following it, but when you start applying for these jobs, they kind of like it because they know that we're up for the challenge to learn new things, and we have the basics of knowing the software, and we have the math, we have the physics, so we kind of touch upon little things. So we're like kind of like the whole package and stuff. Like STEM, we have the science, we have the technology, we have the math, and of course we have the engineering behind it. But the learning never stops, even after you transfer and you start working.
All right, Carlos, we'll give you a slightly different question. How did you pick the graduate program you're in, and could you describe a typical day as a graduate student?
How did I pick? I'm sorry.
The graduate program that you're in, so San Francisco State.
San Francisco State is a good school. It's also local to where I was born and raised. I chose San Francisco State. So what I did as an undergraduate student at UC Santa Cruz was I conducted research by looking at eclipsing variables in globular clusters. Now, what is that? What in the world are you talking about? So it's basically, a binary is basically two stars that orbit each other based on mutual gravity. And they're called eclipsing because from our line of sight, they eclipse one another, hence eclipsing binaries. So I was just in love with globular clusters in general, because what globular clusters are just basically a big system collected of stars, basically. What is a globular cluster? It's basically a system that's comprised of around 1 million stars. And it's spherical shape, globally shaped, and that's why hence the word globular cluster. And I enjoyed studying globular clusters primarily because they're one of the most interesting things to study in astronomy, because they're about as old as the universe itself, at 13.7 plus or minus gigayears or billions of years. I went to San Francisco State right after because the leading expert in globular clusters, what do you know, is here in San Francisco, at San Francisco State University. Adrienne Kuhl, expert in the field of globular cluster, published so many papers on that. She knows ins and outs of those systems. And I guess I was very fortunate from Santa Cruz to San Francisco. I came there, I worked under her guidance, and that's why I chose San Francisco State. And it's a great program. The physics is small, but it's great. You get to get very acquainted with all the professors there. They will know you very well. They will know how good you are in your physics, and they will open doors for you. So that's one of the good things about going at a graduate program, that it's also small. It doesn't matter if it's big or small. There's benefits to being small, because if it is small, then everybody will recognize your work. And I mean, I don't brag there, but if anyone asks you, that I guess I'm known for my meticulous work. I'm honest with you, I have my math homeworks since Math 120 from Cañada College. They're in my Dropbox, they're scanned, and now every time I finish a semester, I make a book out of it by binding it, by going to the local FedEx. So whenever there is a need for me to recall how do you do a simple linear equation or a distance from one point to another, I mean, it's in my head for the moment, but sometimes I might forget, just go back to my shelf, like, all right, let's go back 40 years ago and open and look at my homework. So what is a typical day for an astronomer? Well, you can't avoid to do astronomy without having to know a little bit of programming. If you want to be a theoretical astrophysicist, like my wife, then you got to know how to program. You need to learn multiple languages as well, because you will find that when you do research with one professor or another professor, they were taught different programs when they were students. And so there is this point where you have to, well, I have to learn how to use MATLAB. Okay, now I have to learn how to use interactive data language, IDL. So sometimes they're very nice level. As long as you can do your research in whatever program you use, go ahead. But a typical day for an astronomer is sitting down at a computer. It doesn't sound boring, trust me, it's not boring, because your mind is always stimulated during those hours. You have to really think, first of all, before I touch a keyboard, what am I looking for? What's the point here? And you always have to address these points very soon, very quickly, before you even start sitting down and doing research, because you really got to understand what's going on, what's your goal, what do you want to accomplish, and what's the whole point of what you're doing. Sometimes I spend probably 2 hours, really, or sometimes I spend 15 hours just on the computer doing research, trying to get my program to work, really. What do I do, for example? I look at a set of images of stars. You look at those stars, you do what's called a data reduction. You have to be able to, through your program, be able to detect every single point in that image. And if there's a high source of intensity, that's a star, it considers this as a star. What do you get out of that? Basically a list of approximately 65,000 stars with magnitudes in one particular filter. The magnitude of that star in a different filter. The magnitude of that star in another filter. And then you subtract those values or subtract those colors to get basically, I don't know if you guys have taken astronomy here already, to get HR diagrams or Hart's Russell diagram, which basically tells you the class of star or the magnitude of the star as a function of its color. I have to do a lot of HR diagrams because I have to look specifically for a specific kind of star that used to be stars, now they're dying out. In order to find out a whole maze of stars in an image, well, how do I know I'm looking at a specific kind of a population of stars? You do HR diagrams, and that will show you, that will give you different clusters in the image. And by lots of analysis that have been done by astronomers before, you're going to be able to detect, well, I know that the top right-hand corner, if they're bright, they lie to the top right of that graph. And that's basically what I do as a researcher. I'm an observational astronomer, so I analyze stars a lot, and use a lot of statistical analysis.
All right, now that I've gotten all of my questions answered, I'm going to open it up to the audience. If you have a question for a particular panelist here, you can ask them. If you just have a general question for the panel, do we have any takers for first question? Yes.
Okay, I have a question for the gentleman here on the end and the gentleman who just passed the microphone. Okay, so my question to you is, as someone who designs chips, how much, if you will, autonomy do you have in your projects, and where does the intellectual property rights come in? Do you have that advantage or luxury at all of being able to do that? And then when you're done, I'll ask.
How much right do we have to the IP? You'll get your name on the patent, but the company owns all IP that gets developed at the company. You might get a plaque with a little bit of recognition, but that's it. Ownership is it's the company's ownership. What was the other?
Okay, so it's the company's ownership. So does that mean also, let's just say, for instance, you created a particular piece of software, and the company actually uses that to go to market. They decide that now they're going to take the company public. Would they give you any stock in that?
So if it's a privately held company that's pre-IPO, then as one of the initial employees, I would think you'd get some stock options. But in terms of reaping, it's no, you don't. It's not like you own your own company, you develop this IP, you take it to the market, and since you're the majority owner, you get the full benefits in terms of the financial aspect of things. But no, for a publicly held company, any IP, it essentially belongs to the company. For a privately held company as well, it's like LLC or something, they own it as well. It's essentially standard. That's how it is in tech companies. I haven't heard of an example that's otherwise. Unless you start your own shop, right? Start your own business.
Okay, thank you for answering that question. And for you, sir, as an astronomist, exactly, and I don't mean to, be flippant with this question, but why do they pay you to look at stars? What is the significance of the benefit to humanity as far as what you may or may not discover?
It's very simple, to expand people's knowledge. For the average person to understand where we come from, how everything evolved, how everything come from, how things evolved in time. It's really a question I would ask myself: what do they pay astronomers? Why? It's fun, but why do we get paid for it? Then, as I got deeper into physics and astronomy, I realized these are important questions to ask. I am curious myself, just as millions of people might be curious to know. Why does the sun shine the way it does? Why is it as far as it is? Why isn't it any closer? Why are we in the Goldilocks zone? And I find it amazing to know that there's people in the world, astronomers, 6,000 astronomers, because that's all there is. Suppose there's approximately 6 billion people in this world. There's 6,000 astronomers. That's to say there's one out of every million there's an astronomer. But I appreciate those astronomers because it's amazing to know that they wake up every day trying to supply answers to these questions. I mean, these questions have been lingering for thousands of years. Why are we here? And those questions are still hot. And we want to be able to address those questions. And, well, for people who actually want to do that as a profession, as a career, we got to eat. But that's the best answer I can give you. Why we get paid as astronomers. Because it's the fundamental question that drives us as human beings.
So to add a little backup to that, a lot of scientific discoveries and equipment that we use now was discovered while someone was studying something else that you may or may not care of. Like, oh, this material is really conductive, and now it's an MRI machine. So answering some of these questions do end up frequently, not all the time, translating into technologies and things that you end up using every day. Other questions? Yes?
This is directed to all three of you. Would you say that you guys do a lot of independent work, or do you mostly work under somebody else?
Well, in astronomy, I guess you have the luxury to either work independently or work in groups. It also depends on the subject that you study. If you're going to study, like, the evolutionary history of the universe, that's going to take more than one person. It's a difficult question. If you're a walking genius like I am. I guess that's one of the great things about astronomy is that you have the liberty to choose if you want to work independently, or if you want to work in groups. There's also that luxury that you can be very shallow, work in different subjects of astronomy. I want to learn how stars are formed, but I also want to learn about cosmology. I want to know the evolution of the universe itself. So you get to decide, really, in a sense, what you want to study. Or you can be shallow and look at different subjects, or you can be in depth in one specific field. I guess I can't speak for the rest of the field of electrical engineering, but that's at least on the side of astronomy, and I believe that's the same in physics, particle physics, particle astrophysics, so many fields. And so remember that that's one of the great things is if you don't want to be bossed around or you don't want to work for someone, science, astronomy is one of those fields where you study at your pace, and you study what you want to study. And whatever you do as an astronomer, you're contributing.
I think I don't know if you have a question for him to follow up.
Oh, no, those are the questions.
No, I think we're, yes, if you have anything to add about the independent or group work, and
Do you mean that if I work in groups or if I go home and do something independently?
I just mean like on a daily basis, is it more like you working on your own or like you being told what to do? Like, I mean, I realize that you work for a company, but like you like decide what it is you're gonna be doing? Or,
Okay.
okay.
No. I cleared it.
Okay.
Thank you. When my first rotation, like I said, they cut time system to 6 parts, and they had like an engineer responsible for a certain area, and I was able to work with all of them. And when they gave me a project after they gave me certain training, they're like, okay, this area has a lot of outages. Like we called it lists. Those are my favorite ones because they're like, okay, this specific circuit that's connected to this many people have for the past 5 years have experienced like a lot of outages. So what I had to do, I had to plot all the outages on the map, and I had to come up with a way of like, okay, well, there seems to be a lot of outages over here, and then I had to think what's out there. And me being from the Bay Area, I was like, oh well, there's like this is overhead. There's like a park there. There's like a lot of birds. So like because a lot of birds are dying, like flying through them, and just like so then we had to like think about it, like, well, would it be beneficial to add like some sort of protection, or put the whole system there underground. So like it depends on the supervisor as well and the engineering people you work with. So I mean, I come up with ideas on my own, and we have meetings and I discuss it. And if anyone has a better suggestion, then we go up with that. So I like it because it's kind of both in a way. And when I was in my first rotation, I worked with construction guys because they're the ones out there doing it. And I have the opportunity to actually go out there and see it and oversee. And the good thing about me like being an entry, I'm allowed to go out there and ask them questions, and it's good being an intern as well because you're allowed to ask all these mistakes. But now I think it's more independent because I'm on the business side. So now it's just like, okay, I need this information, do this. It's like a bunch of Excel and spreadsheets and stuff. But it's like a good balance of both. I like it personally.
Yeah, I guess quickly. So depending on when you start off of you taking a technical route, you start off as what you call as an individual contributor, where you have a big system, but you're given only a subblock of that, which you own. Depending on whether you work for a large company or a small company, the large company might have already done that, and so there's previous designs that you would leverage to port to another technology. There, it's mostly just modifications, tweaks. But if you end up working at a smaller company who's just starting to build up this expertise, then you could add a lot more of your own innovation into that. You started from scratch. I prefer the latter, but it really depends. And as you move up, then you start to manage design teams. You become an owner of more of a system level, where you need to know what's going on in each individual subblocks, and you manage that. I don't even know if that's a question right there. U of M, of course, but.
another question over there?
Yeah.
This is for Carlos, actually. With NASA being slowly but surely more and more defunded, where do you see the space program going? Do you see it going more privatized, or do you see it going back to government funding?
That's a good question. It's actually things that I leave on my desk not to think about for the moment. But it's a good question. I don't know how to answer it. Because I really haven't. I guess it's difficult. For example, my research is under NASA funding. So, it's for the moment, as where things stand in life, it's kind of difficult right now because it's kind of short in funding also with astronomy. And it makes it just a tad more difficult to get those grants for you to continue your research projects. Where do things might go? That's a good question. I'm not sure.
More funding for science, please.
Yes.
I
Yes.
once read that this country had spent all the money that we spend on defense, on space exploration, that we would be on the moon by now, like a moon colony. Do you think there's any truth to that?
As far as perhaps,
But would we be able to defend the moon?
I guess I don't know how to address your question, but
Moon colonies, you think that's a good idea?
I'll leave those for the higher professionals to make the calls.
Do you have any other questions? Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up. Last question over here.
Did you get to visit other telescopes in the world?
You do, and it really, when it comes to it, it really depends what your interest in astronomy is. If you want to be an observational astronomer, then you do get the opportunities through school, through the programs. For example, if you would desire to do astronomy, the University of Hawaii is a good school to consider because they get a lot of Keck telescope time. And Keck telescope, if you guys are not familiar, is the biggest telescope in the world in the United States. Well, not in the United States, in the world. And it's special commodities, and it was through that telescope that it basically was discovered that the universe is not only expanding but accelerating. The University of Hawaii gives a lot of time for graduate students to go there and have special time to make observations of these images. I guess in my sense, I've had the fortune to use the Hubble Space Telescope. I say it's fortunate because basically regardless of what telescope you look at here on Earth, you have the obstruction of the atmosphere of the Earth. If you ever guys look at night, and look at stars, and you see them twinkling, that really isn't an intrinsic property of the star. If you're in space, stars don't twinkle. That's an illusion that's caused by the atmosphere of the Earth. It's just like you see a penny at the bottom surface of a swimming pool. It looks like it's moving, but it literally isn't. It's just still. It's just an optical illusion that's caused by the surface, the breaking surface of the water. Same thing with the atmosphere of the Earth. When you use telescopes that are past the atmosphere, like the Hubble Space Telescope, you get these beautiful HD images, and you can be able to see individual stars and clusters like the systems that I look at.
I would recommend Googling images from the Hubble telescope if you have not. It will be an excellent evening for you. Let's go ahead and give all our speakers a great round of applause.